I've actually learned as I've went along. All this started as a joke, and then it went viral. CNN picked it up, and overnight we were on something like 4,000 news outlets in 130 countries. It was, I mean, ridiculous. And so all these people came to us from all around the world, and they all had different ideas of what Slow Jamistan was. And so one of the things that I say when I'm being serious, and this is one of the few serious interviews I've ever given, which is why I'm not in costume and I'm not speaking in my accent. In fact, I will even deny that I'm the Sultan right now because I'm speaking as Randy. But I've learned that really Slow Jamistan is what people make it, whatever. So for some people, it's all about being a sovereign citizen and saying, yeah, this is we're not the U.S., etc. And for others, they have fun with it, and it's a fun thing for them. And the funniest thing is watching the 1% of folks who don't get satire and who literally think we're a cult, and they say, oh, the U.S. is going to bring tanks in and demolish your country. And then I'm like, dude, this is our country. There's nothing to demolish. It's bushes. They're going to find nothing there. No weapons, no stockades, So it's...
Welcome everyone to another Otto Gomes show. My name is Otto Gomes, your host, and today I am super excited to talk about this next guest. His name is Randy RDub Williams, aka the Sultan. RDub is an internationally syndicated love songs and dedications DJ whose Sunday night slow jams show is heard on 240 radio stations each week. Starting in radio at the age of 15, he's written 2 best-selling books and has appeared on Shark Tank and The Kelly Clarkson Show. He recently finished his goal to visit all 193 countries on the planet. And what happens when you run out of countries? Well, you create your own. RDub is the lifetime appointed Sultan of the world's newest country, the Republic of Slojamistan. This 11-acre sovereign nation has its own currency, passports, over 18,000 registered citizens, and a national anthem. Actually, let's listen to that national anthem right now. It's nice.
This here's a song about a place.
Stand up. Stand up.
Listen close, my dear friend.
This song sounds so familiar to me. I don't know why, but we'll talk about that. Hello, Randy RDub. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. What a fantastic way to start the morning. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to getting into it and having some fun today.
Man, I am just so fascinated about your story and your journey. I actually, in the research, that's the first time I learned that you've been to 193 countries. I thought I was all big cakes here going to 47 countries, but you've been to all of them. But before we get into that specifically, let's start at the beginning. I want to know more about you and your journey to this point. So tell me, what was that first moment where you had the shock away from the system that you were able to like unplug from the matrix?
In elementary school, in elementary school, and I hopefully I understand the question you're asking. I may not, but I'll try. But in elementary school, and this is going to sound really, really weird, and I don't know if it answers your question, but I remember being in 2nd or 3rd grade, and I was in elementary school, and all the kids went, it was snack time, it was recess, and they all went into their line to get the food that the public schools, would serve, whatever it was, a muffin or something boring.
Mine was taquitos.
Nice. As a 9-10-year-old, I just went into the teacher's lounge and ordered the good stuff, the Oreos and the coffee. And I remember the cafeteria lady who worked both ends of the little serving aisle, right, for the kids and the teachers. I remember she looked at me weird, like you're supposed to be there with the kids. And I'm like, I tipped her like $1. I'm like, hey Martha, don't worry about it. I'll take some Oreos and let me get a coffee. And she's like, okay. And she gave it to me. How'd you get that? I'm like, you just go get it. And so, there's been a few monumental times in my life where I've learned, like, man, stuff is out there for the taking. Most people, they're just afraid to ask. And there's been a couple of other key moments in my life, starting when I was 15 years old. And there was an advertisement in the newspaper for a mobile DJ. And I wanted to be a DJ. I wanted to be in radio since I was a small kid. And my mom held up the paper and she said, Randy, you should call. They're looking for a DJ. And I looked at my mom and I said, Mom, I'm only 15. I don't have a car. I have no experience. They're going to laugh at me. Thank you, but no thanks. And I went back to my job as a landscaper. I've been working since I was 12, and I was doing landscaping in Arizona, which was super, super grueling work. I get home the next day, and my mom gives me this horrendous news that she called the company for me, talked to the owner, and told the owner my story, and set up an interview for me. And now I look back, I'm like, that's so sweet of my mom to do. But as a 15-year-old, I was mortified. I'm like, Mom, you ruined me. The end of the story is I begrudgingly called the owner. I'm like, I'm sorry, my mom called. Yeah, I want to work for you. And I ended up getting the job. And that was the moment in my life that changed my life forever, saying, man, you know what? Go get it and ask for it. So my entire life, I've been asking for things, many of which I haven't been qualified for. I asked to be the program director in Los Angeles. Coming from Tucson, Arizona, which is very unheard of, I got the job. I asked to be on Shark Tank. They had me on. Now there's, for every one success I've had, there's been 99 asks that I've asked for that they've said no or simply ignored me. But it's a law of averages, man. Keep asking. You'll get those things.
That I live by that myself. I actually have a tattoo of a scripture verse. I grew up Pentecostal Christian. Matthew 7:7-8, which is ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and the door shall be open. And I'm all about that. Yeah, you got to keep it moving forward. That's interesting. So was it essentially the awareness of possibility that kind of shook you a little bit out of the matrix and let you down this road of self fulfillment, I guess?
Absolutely. And honestly, the message that you have tattooed, I mean, that's honestly the secret to life. And I believe that if everybody followed that, their lives would be so much richer. Now I find myself as a program director of 2 major radio stations in San Diego, and I have so many opportunities to give to the younger folks. If they'd only ask, like, my door is open, and I've even said that. And there's just, I think, very few people out there that, for some reason, and they had the same block that I did, maybe, and that was, they're going to say no, or it's going to look awkward, or I'm going to be embarrassed when I receive that rejection. And man, I wear my rejections like a badge of honor, because again, the more rejections you get, it's like asking girls to dance. Sooner or later, one of them's going to say yes. So,
great analogy. I love it. So fast forward now to 2020. I feel like 2020 we went into a different dimension all of a sudden, and then things just went out the door. All reality just got shaken up. But I saw that Slow Jamistan, the country that you founded, was enacted or became independent. It was in 2020 or 2021. Am I correct? December.
Correct. 2021, December 1st. Yeah.
So what happened to you in 2020 when all that mainstream narrative BS, in my opinion, happened? What happened to you that you felt the need that, hey, you know what? I'm going to create my own nation.
It's a tough question because it's multiple answers. But the short story is, for me, it was about being creative and letting my creative juices continue to flow. I get bored pretty easy. I always want to have a new project to do. And look, I'm not the first to come up with this idea of making his own country. There were many others before me. So I got some great inspiration. But it's exactly it. I said, look, I've been a rule breaker my entire life. My philosophy is, I'll break rules, dumb rules, as long as it doesn't hurt other people. I believe a lot of rules are made for the good of all, because there's a lot of dumb people out there that need to follow rule, need to stay in the lane, need to color inside the lines. but I feel that there's so many people, yourself included, and many of your viewers and listeners that have the capability to color outside the lines and do a lot of good things for society. So that being said, yeah, I said, look, I'm gonna make my own country. You first have to dive into the question, or the answer is, well, what makes a country a country? And contrary to popular belief, it's not recognition. If you look in the Montevideo Convention, specifically Article 3, it literally states that a sovereign state does not need recognition from anyone else. It needs borders, it needs leaders, it needs a population, but you don't need anyone to recognize you to be a country. So 11 acres later, we have the nation, the Republic of Slojamistan. And is it serious? A little bit. It's a lot of joking. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of goofing. But one of the most interesting things is people who ask, well, are you really a country? I say yes, but that's for you to decide. Some people think Taiwan is not a country. They say, nope, it belongs to China. We won't get into the Palestine thing right now. It's a tough conversation to have. But there's other countries like Kosovo, or Western Sahara, or Vatican City. I mean, all these people and all these countries have citizens that absolutely, they will die for their country, saying, yeah, Kosovo is a country. But in the meantime, you have the UN or different countries saying, no, you're not a country. You belong to Serbia. So they could say the same thing about Slowjamistan and the U.S. Bottom line is, we're here to have fun.
I love that. I love that. Quick question though: was it one day you woke up and you wanted just to create a nation, or was there a process to get to that point? Because you seem like you know your law, and it seems like you need to know your law if you're going to go down this path.
Yeah, so I visited another micronation. So that's, people refer to my country and others as micronations because they're very small. They're not recognized by many people. Although we'll be at the NATO summit this year in Washington D.C. We're doing some things that most micronations don't do. But back to your answer, I visited another micronation in Nevada. And I was inspired, by the gentleman's creativity, by his laws, by his constitution, by his flag, really by everything. And I didn't realize it at the time that the seed was planted. The idea was conceived, and just like I can compare it to a woman having a child. She may not know the moment of conception, but maybe 4 weeks later she realizes, oh, I'm pregnant. It was the same thing for me. I didn't realize that seed was planted until weeks later. I'm like, I think I'm going to do it. And I looked for land, and the rest was Slowjamistan history.
That's amazing. I mean, I can only imagine the process you went through in your mind to get to that point of like, I'm going to do this. The confidence needed, really. Is that the passport?
So there's the passport.
Wow, you guys have passports.
This is an extra passport, but you can see the inside. Instead of founding fathers quotes like the U.S., we have hip hop artists quotes on the very top. My Slowjamistan passport, the one I keep at home, this is an extra one, has been stamped in by 17 different, maybe 19 by now, 19 different countries, including Germany, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, Kenya. Our currency, our serial numbers are all unique. So this is kind of as close to legitimate currency as you can get. We do accept this currency in Slowjamistan.
Who's that guy? Who's that guy on that green one?
Man, this guy is just some handsome dude riding a donkey. So, it's a lot of fun. We have license plates. I'm looking around my office. We have some of the different postage stamps, postcard. It's a lot of fun. Honestly, anyone can make their own country.
That's amazing. Well, let's expand on that a little bit. I've actually been going down this road myself to not to create a country, but just to correct my status here in the U.S. I came here to the U.S. when I was 8. I was naturalized a citizen in 2015, and since 2020, I've just been going down this road of, okay, how do I correct status? Like, what does it mean to be a sovereign in this country? So how does one go about going down that path? Like, what would you say would be the first recommendation step?
So I would actually pass it to one of my dear friends who is an expert on the situation, and that's probably not the answer you're going to want to hear. But I am, believe it or not, even though I've created Slowjamistan, I'm just now starting to really, really learn about the technicalities, the loopholes, the laws, the rights as you mentioned, sovereign citizens. I'm not an expert in that. I have a good friend of mine named Brandon Joe Williams.
Oh, yes. I'm actually going to interview him in 5 hours.
Tell him we just had an interview. Like that's the dude. Like I'm actually like learning his course. And again, I would be misleading you and misleading all your listeners and viewers if I told you that my desire, my everything behind Slowjamastan was to be a sovereign citizen. Honestly, Slowjamastan is more of just a fun project to goof off, take people's mind off, all the crazy political BS and dysfunction and divisiveness going on in our country now. I mean, I think we're at a time right now, in my lifetime, I've never seen the people of this country, of the U.S., so polarized and really not even able to talk, not even able to express their opinion without just being hated on it. God forbid you express your opinion. We've lost the ability to talk. And so I'll stay on the serious note for a little bit. One of the values of Slowjamistan, besides the funny stuff, and when I say funny stuff, we outlaw Crocs. I talk in a funny accent when I'm the Sultan. I mean, really, there's a lot of satire that goes into Slowjamistan. But behind it all is a serious value, and that's the value that America used to have and a lot of countries still have. And here's that value out of the value that's missing is, and I know this isn't the theme to your show, but I think it's important to talk about the value that's missing is the people coming together and being one. And let me explain just a little bit. Let me drill down just a little bit on something that I've witnessed as a guy growing up in the U.S. When I see political unrest in the U.S. and I see protests and or riots, I see people in the streets either peacefully protesting or unfortunately doing damage and vandalizing and being violent, etc. And they're not waving American flags, and they're not proud to be American anymore. Versus, and you can speak on this because you're from Brazil, versus when I see protests and marches and even unrest in other countries like Brazil. When I noticed the marches in Brazil over some of the past presidents for corruption, the people flooded the streets. They were mad. They were shouting. Fists were in the air. But damn it, they were flying Brazilian flags. And they were saying, "We are Brazilian." And I'm getting fired up about this because that's not what happens in the U.S. Maybe for some groups, right? Maybe some groups do that and fly the. But for example, though, most of the things I see on TV, they're not saying we're Americans first. In fact, they're stepping on the flag. And so one of the values that Slowjamistan has is, we say no matter what your political affiliation is or your sexual orientation or your genders or whatever labels you have, when you go into Slowjamistan, we're going to throw all those labels out the window, and we are Slowjamistanis. And I know that sounds silly, but it's literally kind of a lesson that I'd like for other Americans to see. God, you're right. In America, we've lost that. We're too busy fighting over identity politics and labels. Anyway, I hope that makes sense.
I love that. No. This is amazing. There was a part of me that was thinking, how serious is this nation that you created? And you're definitely answering that question. It was definitely an experiment, I'm guessing, and something that you wanted to try. But it seems like there's a deeper meaning here. This bigger meaning to creating it. Having fun with it. I'm all about gamifying abundance. That's one of my slogans. Gamify your abundance. Have fun with it. Bring back the childhood mindset. There is no division. And I agree with you. Here in the U.S., you see a bunch of flags: BLM, LGBTQ, the American flag, I guess sometimes. But it's like divided. They're all standing for something, but it's very, very divided in how we relate with each other. And so I love that you're sharing this about Slowjamistan. It's definitely giving me a new perspective of it.
I've actually learned as I've went along. All this started as a joke, and then it went viral. CNN picked it up, and overnight we were on something like 4,000 news outlets in 130 countries. It was, ridiculous. And so all these people came to us from all around the world, and they all had different ideas of what Slow Jamistan was. And so one of the things that I say when I'm being serious, and this is one of the few serious interviews I've ever given, which is why I'm not in costume and I'm not speaking in my accent. In fact, I will even deny that I'm the Sultan right now because I'm speaking as Randy. But I've learned that really Slow Jamistan is what people make it, whatever. So for some people, it's all about being a sovereign citizen and saying, yeah, this is we're not the U.S., etc. And for others, they have fun with it, and it's a fun thing for them. And the funniest thing is watching the 1% of folks who don't get satire and who literally think we're a cult, and they say, oh, the U.S. is going to bring tanks in and demolish your country. And then I'm like, dude, this is our country. There's nothing to demolish. It's bushes. They're going to find nothing there. No weapons, no stockades, So it's a lot of fun, and I do encourage all of your viewers and listeners to become a citizen. It's absolutely free. This is not for profit. I take all of the money that we make from merchandise and put it back into the country. It's just really a fun thing to do. So, Otto, are you a citizen yet?
No, I was actually going to ask if I can be one.
Absolutely.
We'll
swear you in after the podcast.
I love it. Well, tell me a little bit about why you decided to visit every country there is. Was it just tell me about it. I know you also visited the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, right?
Yeah.
And now that's its own little nation inside another nation, I guess, like the Vatican it is in Italy. So what was your intention of visiting all those countries?
Absolutely. So a couple of the bullet points are, when I was a child, as I mentioned, in elementary school, I grew up in a middle class neighborhood in the Valley in California, it was just really normal and middle class. And in my school, in Los Angeles Unified School District, they did an integration program where they would bus kids in from the inner cities where apparently the schools were shitty. Instead of fixing those schools, which they probably should have done, but whatever. The point is, I had all these friends, and they would basically land in elementary school with me, and they came from just very different places. And as a kid, as an 11-year-old, 10-year-old American kid who lived in this little suburb in the Valley, East LA might have well been a different country or a different planet. And I remember as a kid stowing away on the bus with one of my friends, riding to his house to have a sleepover on a school night in like East LA. And you're like, whoa, what is this? As a sheltered middle-class kid, I'm in this place, the neighborhood, the house, the people, the music, the cars, the language. It's so foreign. And when I look back in hindsight, I remember that was my first interaction with a world outside of my own bubble, and that kind of gave me an endless curiosity. Took my first trip overseas when I was 26 years old. I was always enamored with the Latin culture. I always tried to have Hispanic girlfriends when I was in elementary school when I was a kid, and I didn't realize how much I loved the culture. And here I am in Spanish class in college, and in Portuguese class in college, and my Spanish class, a Spanish teacher, Miss Houston, and she was telling the class about her travels, and she would talk about her trip to Brazil. And I remember as a kid, I'm like, that sounds great. And I remember going home and Googling Brazil and seeing the picture of Rio de Janeiro, Copacabana, the Bay, Sugarloaf Mountain, Jesus, the Redeemer, and saying, man, I want to go here. And my best friend canceled on me twice. And I said, screw it, I'm going to go by myself. I was scared to death. I was 26 years old, not well-traveled at all. I think this is one of the first foreign countries I've ever been to. But I booked the ticket anyway. I took a chance. And I remember at the time thinking, this may suck. This may be like going to Disneyland by yourself. Is this going to be weird that I'm going by myself? And the answer is, I went by myself. And 10 days later, in the airport in Rio de Janeiro, leaving, I was physically crying. And I didn't realize that a country could make me feel, could give me the love of a woman, to make me feel like, dude, Brazil's a country. What do you mean you're in love with Brazil? But I fell in love with Brazil as I would fall in love with a woman. And I cried tears. And 4 years later, I was living in Brazil. I rented an apartment, which I now own, and I quit my job, and I lived in Brazil because it was nagging at my heart and my head. And I remember my girlfriend at the time. I'll never forget where we were shopping. We were at the swap meet in LA, and all I would do is talk about Brazil. And she finally looked at me. She says, "We shut the fuck up about Brazil already." And I'm like, it really hurt.
Go get a room with Brazil, dang it.
It really hurt my feelings. So I had to move there to get it out of my system. So that was one. And then that just kind of, that opened it up. And, since I was already in South America, I started seeing other countries, Uruguay and Argentina. And my first goal was, hey, let's see all of South America, all of Central and South America by the time you turn 40. And in doing that, I stumbled on some very weird countries like Suriname, where they speak Dutch. Most people, in fact, everybody in my whole office had never even heard of Suriname. I flew there. I knew nothing about it. I'm in this weird place. And really, to answer your question, when you travel to different countries, especially the lesser known ones, for me, I feel like I'm in a movie and I'm the star because I'm in this random fairy tale. I'm in Suriname, where the people don't speak Spanish, they speak Dutch. Everything is just random and weird. The architecture is weird, and I say that in a good way, not in a bad way, weird. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, back home, all of my coworkers have never even heard of the country I'm in. This country has its own economy, its own president, its own laws, its own army, its own culture, its own history, its own way of life. Why have I never heard of this place? And so that was another thing that kind of sparked my interest. And finally, the other thing that just ignited this flame all at once was when I went to Venezuela. I had to go. I was about to turn 40. I had to finish my goal of seeing all of Central and South America by the time I turned 40. The year was 2016, the worst time you could visit Venezuela ever. I went to the consulate in San Francisco, and all the other Venezuelans, they were very nice to me. They looked at me. They're like, "Why are you going? Don't go." And I went, and I was scared to death. One of my favorite places. So I have a thirst of seeing bizarre places, seeing places where other tourists don't go. And unfortunately, hopefully not to my demise, I love going places that I should not go. So, from there we could talk about, going to Libya, being the first tourist to visit Libya after the fall of Gaddafi, and, Syria and South Sudan. I'm looking at the map. Somalia is another place that people shouldn't go. Oh, yeah. Man, I get a high on going to those places because the people there, aside from the bad people, the bandits and the criminals, the people of those countries are all wonderful. And there's so many wonderful things about so many of those places that just get a bad rap.
That's definitely something that I experienced in my own travels. I did a lot of traveling when I was in my early 20s. And I remember what I realized was that people are good. Like I've traveled to enough countries that you look at mainstream media or you research about it and you get pushed all this negativity around it, and it's a third world country and you can get shot, all this stuff, and then you go there and you actually experience it, and it's like, man, this is amazing. People are amazing here. And I can say that about pretty much every country I've been to. Which one would you say was I don't want to say weirdest, but like what you were not expecting, like so out there?
I have the answer. That's a great question. But by the way, going back on the media, I'm not embarrassed to admit that as a young man, witnessing 9/11 in my 20s, I was angry, and I listened to a lot of radio, a lot of talk radio, and unfortunately, I bought into the fact. I really thought that the Islamic world was out to get us. And I remember traveling to one of my first Muslim majority countries, and I was scared. It was Senegal, which is actually really tame. But I landed there, and I just saw a bunch of guys in robes and caps, running around, and I'm like, they're going to kidnap me and kill me. And I mean, honestly, my opinion was changed in about 24 hours. And some of those countries are some of my favorite to go to. In fact, I flew back from that specific trip in my own robe and my cap. And I'm not Muslim, I'm not Christian. And I even asked
I went to Saudi Arabia, and I had the same experience, and I came back with like the whole outfit with the with the headgear and everything.
TSA was not pleased when I landed in Miami.
Especially if you come with like a full beard as well.
Beard, and they're like, "Where'd you go?" And I'm like, "Oh, do you really want to know?" And I listed out the 14 countries that I just visited. And when I got to Libya, they're like, "Yeah, come with me." And they're like, "So how long have you been Muslim?" I'm like, "I'm not really Muslim. I think I'm a Christian." So anyway, the reason I bring that up, Otto, is because it really, really, really changed my heart and my mind, but it absolutely changed my heart. And I'm also I'm not an idyllic fool. I do know there's a lot of bad people out there, and there's bad intentions, and there's bad groups. I'm not no offense to hippies. I like hippies, but I'm not a hippie that's, it's all love. Like I'm very much a realist. And so I do know there's still bad guys out there and still bad folks out there. But as you mentioned, the majority of things, even going to a war-torn country like Libya, I'm in the main square, Martyrs Square, and guys selling popcorn, and this kid's walking with balloons, and there's families, and it's like, wow, it's not what you see on the news 24/7. To answer your question about the biggest surprise, I love this answer. I love this question. When I started seeing every country in the world, I realized there are groups of other crazy people like me who are doing the same thing. And I started to meet people that have seen, 100 countries, a few people that have seen all of the countries. And, I was a newbie at the time, and maybe I'd seen only 30 or 40 countries, although I was checking them off quite quickly and furiously. And so, of course, the main question I'd always ask people is, what's your favorite country? And then I realized, I need to ask people what their least favorite country is. And I remember that the most common answer to the folks in my circle, when I asked them their least favorite country, they said Bangladesh. I said, interesting. And they're like, yeah. And they told me all the reasons they didn't like Bangladesh. It's dirty, it's crowded, it's chaotic, they weren't comfortable. So I really was not looking forward to going to Bangladesh. I booked that trip during the same trip that I went to places like Sri Lanka and, believe it or not, the Maldives. And when you think of luxury and expensive places to go, Maldives is right up there. That's where the rich people go, to Maldives. And so my genius head booked the same trip. I think I went to Bahrain and Kuwait, which was nice, and then Bangladesh. And I specifically booked only, I think, one or maybe even two, or I think it was one night in Bangladesh. I wanted to get in and get out. I was like not looking for. I'm like, I gotta go to Bangladesh. Within maybe 30 minutes on the ground in Bangladesh, it became one of my top 5 countries in the world. I absolutely adore that place. So the answer is, the thing about traveling is your expectations are always, not always, but they're often challenged and blown away. And so I adore Bangladesh, and I cannot wait to go back. One of my least favorite countries, you didn't ask, but I'll tell you, or one of the places that I expected to be amazing, that I detested, believe it or not, was Nepal. Have you been to Nepal?
No, I've actually. That's interesting you say that. I've heard the opposite, if anything.
Okay,
Because
so
of how beautiful it is, I guess is really what I heard more of. But yeah.
So disclaimer, I did Nepal wrong. I only visited the capital, and apparently when you want to go to Nepal, that's, I think, where the Himalayas are. That's, you want to go on all the nature walks and stuff.
Yeah, that's
So there is a full disclaimer. I only visited the capital, but Kathmandu just sounded so exotic and so like, wow, Kathmandu. In fact, there's a theme park in Florida. I don't remember the name. It's one of the Disney parks where they even have a little area. They have a ride. What's that? No,
Epcot?
it's not Epcot. It's not Epcot. It's the other one. It's the one where they think they have the animals. It's not Epcot. I know Epcot has all the countries.
Animal Kingdom. There's Animal Kingdom,
It could-
Epcot, Magic Kingdom, and
I think it's Animal Kingdom. Someone will correct us in the comments. But it's not Epcot. I'm familiar with all the countries in Epcot. So I went to Animal Kingdom, I think it was, and there's a ride where you're like supposed to be like sledding through the Himalayas, and the ride was amazing, and all the architecture around is, it's Kathmandu. And so anyway, Kathmandu just sounded so romantic in an Indiana Jones way. And I remember coming there after Bhutan, which was one of the most beautiful and idyllic and romantic places you can ever go to. And Kathmandu was just this dirty city full of way too many motorbikes nipping at your heels. in the pedestrian walkways, and people, trying to sell me drugs on the corners, and my credit card got skimmed there, and there were so many things about Kathmandu I just hated. And again, I didn't give it a fair shake, possibly, but when I land somewhere, I get a vibe pretty instantly, and I'm not saying that makes me. I think anyone and everybody, if your senses are aware, you get a vibe wherever you get a vibe. And there are places I land to get a great vibe, get a crappy vibe, get a mediocre vibe. Let me tell you how bad the vibe was for me in Kathmandu. I took about 3 walks around the block, and I decided to cut the vacation short. And I'm going to go to Yemen. And I didn't even plan a trip to Yemen on that trip. But I'm like, 3 days in Kathmandu, I'm out of here. And I jumped online and found a fixture to take me into Yemen. And I got out of there the next day. I had two more nights of hotel that I wasted because I already paid for. I'm like, get me out of here. And I feel bad. I feel like I should come back and give it another chance. But a vibe is a vibe,
You gotta trust your gut sometimes, man. You probably helped yourself by trusting your gut. So I do have a question about the sovereign military order of Malta. So I did see that short video you posted when you went to visit there. Tell me a little bit about your experience with that, because I've heard so many things of people that they defect to it, that fear from the U.S., like military people, because they want to be a part of that. But what was your experience with it?
So I can only tell you my experience. I'm definitely not an expert. What I do know is I think it's one of the only countries, could be the only country, that doesn't have land. So I visited one of their consulates or one of their embassies. But so, obviously they can claim a consulate or an embassy as sovereign, but they don't have a country or a land to claim. So the sovereign, and I'm probably could even say their name wrong, but the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, I think I'm mixing that up, is one of the only countries, if not the only country in the world, that does not claim any land. It's fascinating, and I did read up on the history about it. But what I did is I followed the footsteps of another traveler named Johnny Blair, so I'll give him credit. He had visited their consulate, which is in Malta, and as the geography nerd that I am, I was so excited to go there. And what's fascinating is there was not a lot of people there, meaning it's not a mainstream tourist attraction as many of the other things in Malta and around the world are. And I did call ahead, and I did get an appointment, and I did pay a small fee, and I did get a one-on-one personal tour, and I got to go all the way in, and the crest was above my head, and I was basically standing on their, I guess land, if you want to call it that. They don't call it land, but inside their embassy. I do know they issue passports. I would kill to get one of their passports. And in fact, after this podcast, I'm going to probably research on how I can. I don't think it's easy. I think you have to be blood or have to be part of the royalty. But all I can tell you is it was a very, very beautiful consulate. Tours are available to the public. So definitely when you're in Malta, research that. I can also tell you, and this kind of answers your question, but kind of goes off in a different direction. But people ask me for travel advice often, and I always tell people, I said, look, try to get off the beaten path. Try to cross a border. If you're in Buenos Aires, Argentina, try to take a day and go to Uruguay, because a lot of people don't go to Uruguay. Try to look beyond your comfort zone and go somewhere that may not be as popular or may not be as Gosh, no offense against what's the place everybody goes to at the end of Mexico? Quintana Roo. What's the name of it? It's that big resort city in the tip of Mexico. Everybody goes there.
Dang it!
It's a brain fart, but the state is Quintana Roo. And
yes.
And they go to they all go to this one beach, and I see my friends do it. I'm like, but why did you pick that? Just because everyone else is doing it on Instagram? So I try to challenge people. I said, go to Cuba. It's so close, but it's so different, and you're gonna learn so much. So that's what I say about Malta. And again, I'm getting a little bit off track here, but people who tell me, they say, RDub, I'm going to Italy. Do you have any tips? I said, yes. Take the ferry from Sicily and go to Malta, because Malta is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. The entire country is like a fairy tale, and not a lot of people outside of Europeans Go to Malta. In fact, a lot of Americans haven't even heard of Malta. You're going to be in Italy. Go to Malta. So there's a lot of weird places like the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. When I was traveling throughout Europe, just outside of, let me see if I can get this right. Just outside of Spain, you cross the border into France, but you drive like 5 miles, and then there's this little circular area of land that's a town that belongs to Spain, but you're in France. And then if you want to get even weirder, and I'm pointing at the map because I'm looking at my map right next to me. In fact, I'll show your viewers this is my map in my office. There are at least 2 areas of Morocco that belong to Spain. So you're in Africa and you literally cross a border into the EU, into the European Union, and there's like all of a sudden you're spending euros and the license plates are European, but you're in Africa. You're literally in Africa. Same thing in South America. You can go to French Guiana. And so, well, you know this. You're right above Brazil, but there's this territory that belongs to France. And all of a sudden, French license plate, and everyone speaks French. And so I'm obsessed, going back to the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, I'm obsessed with these little one-off countries. They're fascinating. Another fascinating place is a very tiny country off the west coast of Africa called Equatorial Guinea. And they were the only country colonized by Spain. So they speak 100% Spanish there, besides possibly some tribes in the bush. Their official language is Spanish. So again, you're in Africa, you're a world away from Spain, South America, or any Spanish-speaking territory, including the U.S., but yet you think you're in, Little Havana in Miami or East L.A. at a Mexican grocery store. But it's like, it like your brain misfires because, no, dude, you're in Africa. There's a bunch of those places. I could talk about that for hours.
I mean, I love what you posted the other day on Instagram. You were doing a stories about the people in San Diego that most people even haven't even gone through the border down to Mexico. And it's like, just do that. Just like drive over to another country and experience it if you haven't gone outside of the country yet. And then take those leaps of, going onto a plane and going across the pond and seeing things that are farther away. And also go visit Slow Jamistan. I'm sure you'll have an amazing time.
Absolutely.
Just don't wear Crocs. Which is actually my next question. This question is for the Sultan, if he can answer. What is it about Crocs? Is it just a pet peeve or is it a visceral hatred?
So again, Sultan is not here. Sultan never appears with RDub. They're 2 separate people. But I can speak for the Sultan. I am an official spokesperson.
I'll accept that. Yes.
And I love this podcast because we are going all over the place. And now we'll get really personal. And the thing that I loved about starting a country, and let me also tell you that there are other. This is a fun fact. There are a lot of folks that start micronations that are very, very, very serious about it, and they spend their spare time drafting constitutions and treaties, and they actually don't like that we're kind of having a lot of fun and joking around a lot. They actually don't like that. And so we went to MicroCon, which is actually a convention they have for micronations around the world. And
there's a MicroCon? That's amazing.
Oh, it's YouTube it, Google it when you have a chance, because there's even documentaries done, and we have some footage of MicroCon. MicroCon's amazing. Our first one was in Vegas a couple of years ago, and 50 micronations show up, and what's amazing is some of the more established micronations like Molossia show up, and then I think at the last one there was this cute 7-year-old kid named Hank, and he was wearing a North Korea dictator suit, and he was with his dad, and his country was called the country of Hank, and he had a little display he made out of cardboard. I mean, dude, this was the cutest kid ever, man. I'm like, wow. And so it spans the range of people who are serious, people who are doing it for fun, and everybody in the middle. But we showed up, and we got hated on because I think there were some people there. There was this one guy there, man. He was so stiff. You could tell that he lived in his mom's basement and plays Dungeons and Dragons every Sunday, and he was just serious. And who are these guys with their accents, making fun of Crocs. So, I mean, just to let you in on Microcon, that was fun. I think we've won a lot of those guys over. But they were like, how did these guys get all this press all of a sudden, you know? But so going back to your question, the fun thing for me about, and one reason why I started the country is you can outlaw all of the stuff that frustrates you. So before we get into the Crocs, we have other things outlawed, like, you know, you can't drive in the passing lane of a highway unless you're passing a car, because that's one of my pet peeves. I'm trying to get somewhere. I'm in the left lane. Like, bro, it's the passing lane, dude. If you're not passing cars, you're in the wrong lane. So that's illegal in my country. Although we don't even have highways, so that's the joke. There's not even a highway in our country. I think it's disgusting when people are on airplanes and they take their shoes off and they put their bare feet up on the bulkhead of the aircraft. That's disgusting. So that's illegal in our airspace. So even if you're United Airlines or Southwest Airlines, that's illegal to do if you're flying over our airspace. So, you know, we've sent letters to the FAA saying, hey, be advised, you know. And so, you know, we go down these channels and we, you know, as I mentioned, we're going to the NATO summit. I've met with diplomats all across the country. I was in Havana and I crashed, talk about wedding crashers. I crashed a dinner with ambassadors and diplomats from all around the world, and I wore a black suit just like them with a little flag pin. I didn't wear my Sultan outfit. I didn't want to. I wanted to blend in, and I went around and shook people's hands and told them I'm the Sultan and gave them my card. And so you know, it's fun. Other laws we have: string cheese. You have to peel the cheese. You can't bite the cheese. Again, a pet peeve. 20 years ago.
I read a few. There was don't reply to all. Reply all on emails.
These are all things that piss me off. My roommate and my best friend 20 years ago, he walked in and he's had a big thing of string cheese and he bit it. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He goes, oh, I'm eating cheese. I'm like, bro, it's called string cheese. You got to string it. And so all these things, reply all. Again, don't reply all. Don't hit reply all to a thing you shouldn't. So anyway, dude, it's a bunch of pet peeves that I had that I couldn't do anything about. What am I going to do? Just bitch about it? So I made my own country and I outlawed all these things. But do you wear Crocs, Otto?
Absolutely not.
You
No,
don't?
I
Okay.
Ever since I saw Idiocracy movie.
I think, and so I'm a little old fashioned, and I've pissed people off by saying this. And so there's going to be some people yelling at me that are watching or listening. But I'm old school at heart, and I believe just in general, like, dude, if you're going to the airport, get on a plane. I mean, you should look somewhat respectable. You don't have to wear a suit, but come on. I mean, people showing up in their pajamas or their pants sagged. I'm like, God, have a little bit of just respect, you know? And, you know, nowadays, the new generation, it's the whole, I don't care. It's kind of good because maybe vanity is down a little bit, but they took it too far. It's about being comfortable. I don't care what anyone thinks of me. I'm like, well, yeah, to a point, you know, to a point. When you're getting on a plane looking like you just rolled out of bed, like my parents taught me at least, you know, look presentable. Look presentable. I don't wear Gucci. I shop at Ross. I got this shirt at TJ Maxx. I'm not a brand name guy at all. It's not about being on a socioeconomic scale. It's about having some freaking respect for yourself. So to me, to answer your question, Crocs were like the ultimate in like, bro, how are you leaving the house like this? And it used to be that only like weird nerds, I hate to say the word nerds because I'm a nerd, but like just weird people would wear Crocs. And now it's like like Justin Bieber's walking around in Crocs. So like even people that normally should be really cool, like rappers, right? Like the coolest of cool. If you're a rapper, right? You're supposed to be the cool dude. They're walking around in these big rubber shoes with holes in them. Like, what is this? So that was the foundation of Slow Jamistan. Crocs are not allowed. It's one reason why I think our nation was successful and got a lot of press. You have to be known for something, and that's a marketing rule. That's what I learned in radio my entire life. Got to be like, what are you known for? What's the one thing you're known for? So for Slow Jamistan, it's Crocs. They're illegal, and we have fun with it.
I love that. Yeah, it's I always say that society always overcorrects in one way or another, and this, like you said, like this new generation is just like, I don't care, like it doesn't matter. They just overcorrect it to just you look like a homeless bum. Come on.
Yeah.
I love this conversation. This is going so well. Here's my next question. What would you say in your journey until this point is your biggest regret?
Yeah, the whole don't live with regrets, I think is BS. My biggest regret, and this is a curveball here, but my biggest regret would probably be a few times where I wasn't kind to people. And I live with that. And whether it's an ex-girlfriend that I was not kind to, I never beat anybody or physically hurt people. But of course, I said some harsh things when I was immature, when I was insecure, etc. So that would be my biggest regret as I look back. I'm like, you know what? I would be nicer to people. And then if you take it way, way, way back, you're not really conscious of it when you're like a third and fourth grader. It's like, man, I should have been nicer to, maybe the special needs kids. Now, I was never mean to special needs kids, but I look back, I'm like, I should have sat down with them and had lunch with them. I do think that today's society is a little bit more cognizant of that. So anyway, that's my biggest regret. And then one of my smaller regrets is I lost my mom a couple of years ago, and I was a great son to her, but there's still some regrets where she wanted to spend a little bit more time, watch Jeopardy every night, and I was too busy working. And honest to God, I thought, and this is so random and has nothing to do with your podcast, but I think it's great. It's a great life lesson, and I didn't come up with this idea. Obviously, it's been quoted by many people. I'm just one of the latest to really recognize this because it hurt me, and that is that tomorrow is never promised. And I believed that when my mom would pass away, I believed that she would probably get sick from smoking or cancer or something, and I would basically have notice that she has a year or 2 months or 6 months. And so then I could be on my best behavior, and I could hug her tighter, and I could spend more time with her. My mom had a sudden stroke, and she was in very good health for the most part. So I put off a lot of things. I put off sitting down with her and recording her. I wanted to ask her, I wanted to put her life story on videotape or on digital so I could preserve that forever. I wanted to spend more time with her. But I always thought, there's plenty of time. She's in good health. And she had a stroke like that, and overnight all that was gone. So again, it's a adage that we've heard many times about tomorrow not being promised, but we really need to practice it. We need to practice that, that phone call with your father or your sister, or hopefully not, but even your child, maybe your last. If you treat every person like it's the last time you're going to see them, I think you'll have less regrets. So.
Wow, I'm actually very happy that you shared that. I got goosebumps when you were sharing it. In 2021, so it's gonna be 2 years now, my dad had a sudden heart attack, and it actually lasted like 24 hours. He's alive, he's fine, but he spent 2.5 months in the hospital in a coma from it. He had to get quadruple bypass. It didn't take very well, and then they had to put him in a coma, and he had to stay there the whole time. And that's one thing that I realized myself when he came back to and he left the hospital. I changed the way that I communicate with everyone, where I was like, stuff happens, man, and it happens quick. And not living every day as though it is our last. You can not see what's in front of you. So we almost need to create that filter for ourselves and see life in that way. And it's funny you mentioned that about recording, because that's exactly what I did with my dad. I think because we're both in production. I did the exact same thing. I sat down with him, put a camera, and for like 2.5 hours, 3 hours, I asked every question about him and growing up and things I didn't know. That was like, oh my gosh, my dad did that.
This feeling of never, ever being able, not just to talk to my mom again, but to ask her a question. Like, it was my first dealing with something so final. I was pretty young when my grandparents passed, so that didn't faze me a lot. I was sad. But someone so close to yourself, like your father and my mom, never, ever being able to get the answer to something. Like, hey, Mom, and there's things, there's sayings she said, and there's one saying she said, I freaking Googled it. I can't find it. She would always tell me, I I don't have any tattoos. I've just never wanted the tattoo. There's one tattoo that I'm still considering, and it's the words heaps, gobs, and gristles. And I'm gonna cry saying this, but my mom would always tell me. She would say, I've got to change the topic because I'm going to describe. She'd always say, "I love you, heaps, gobs, and gristles." And like, what does that even mean? Like, where's that from? And I looked it up on Google. Like, that phrase is nowhere. So I'm like, did that come from a movie? So anyway, as you mentioned, man, you filmed that with your dad. Man, anybody watching, man, do that, because that footage for you will be worth all of the money in the world. I would give my life to have an hour of my mom on video answering all these questions. We have little videos of our birthday parties and stuff, but to sit down and have a conversation and have that on tape, everybody's got to do it, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you being vulnerable there. That's
I didn't choose to, man.
No,
it just happened.
This is what I love. This is why I love these interviews. I want to get to the meat and potatoes, and sometimes that happens, and that's okay. And that's, we're all men and women trying to live in this reality and plane of existence and do our thing, and emotions are a part of that. So I appreciate you sharing that. All right, I did have a question about the Sultan Sea. So this is something that you were able to do, and how were you able to do that, to change the name from Sultan to Sultan? It sounds the same. I know people listening are like, you're saying the same word. One is spelled salt, like SALTOTAN, I guess, Sultan, or TEN, and the other one is SULTAN. So how did you do that, and why?
So with respect to this amazing body of water, I'll tell your listeners a very brief story, but it's fascinating. And if anyone wants something fun to do, a rabbit hole to go down, I implore you to Google or jump on YouTube, find a documentary. There's a few out there about the Salton Sea in California. It's spelled SALTON, Salton Sea. Here was an ancient dry lake bed, millions of years old, so it's dry, nothing there. I think it was in the 50s. It could be the 60s. Some United States Corps of Engineers or something, they were working on a project to divert the Colorado River for farming. They lost control of the freaking Colorado River. Think about that for a second. They lost control of the Colorado River. A dam or a levee broke, I'm paraphrasing, and it filled up this ancient lake bed that hadn't had water for, since the dinosaurs. And so overnight, and when I say overnight, maybe in the tune of 3 weeks or whatever, you had land turn into this enormous lake, not quite the size of a Great Lake, but big enough to call a sea. So again, this was in the 50s or the 60s, I think. And so overnight, this area that was about 90 minutes south of Palm Springs all of a sudden attracted millions of dollars in investors, because Palm Springs was the happening place where Bob Hope was and Marilyn Monroe. But Palm Springs didn't have an amazing, huge body of water. The Salton Sea did. So all of a sudden, I mean, this is a fascinating story. In the 60s, all of a sudden, there's this huge boom at the Salton Sea. And when you watch the documentary, you see like old film of some of these old actresses like Elizabeth Taylor, water skiing, and overnight they built hotels and schools and roads and post offices. And this was like the greatest coming, this huge boom. Look at this amazing luxurious place we have in the desert with this body of water. Well, just a few years later, something happened. They had a huge flood or something, and it flooded everything out. Plus, all of the irrigation nearby poisoned the Salton Sea, killed all the fish. I mean, it's a crazy story. It's out of a movie. And so the entire place was abandoned overnight. Everybody packed their shit up and left. And so what you have now near the Salton Sea, it's an amazing place to visit if you like quirky things, is you have this old rotting resort town of the 60s, and the people that live there, it's like, are interesting because, like, why do you live there still? So the Salton Sea in general is an amazing place, and I couldn't just jump into this answer without prefacing it with a little history of the Salton Sea. But if you're ever cruising around California, if you ever make your way to Coachella or Palm Springs, take an extra day or two, drive around the Salton Sea. Man, it is fascinating. So I am the Sultan, and, well, I'm not, but the Sultan is the Sultan, and Slowjamistan is, as the crow flies, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 miles from the Salton Sea. So it's only natural that we change the name to the Salton Sea, Sultan, to commemorate the Sultan. And again, it's all part of the grandiose and very stupid stuff that we do down there. We're all about just doing silly, funny things like calling ourselves a country. So, dude, no one changed the name. We changed the name. But we had a new the NBC affiliate of Palm Springs did a recent 2-part special on the Salton Sea, and they highlighted communities that are around the Salton Sea, and so they interviewed me, and I put my Sultan suit on. I have an entire uniform that I put on, a full uniform, all the medals, and I do the accent, and I have all the medals and this and that, and I talk about, oh yeah, we changed the name to the Salton Sea. And then our social media is pretty badass. We started posting in Salton Sea community groups like, hey, did you know the name changed? And we posted the link to the interview, and we posted the link to our own news service, the Slowjamastan news service, and then freaking Google AI picks it up. So now when you type in Google, like, hey, did they change the name to the Salton Sea? This thing comes up like, Salton Sea was changed to the Salton Sea. But it wasn't. It was changed by us. Again, dude, imagination is so powerful, and I enjoy it so much. And the thing about micronations are so cool because you can do whatever you want to do. It's your fucking... Sorry. It's your land. I don't believe in cursing, by the way. I don't know how that came out. You do what you want to do. It's your land. So, you know, the thing that's amazing about having a micronation is you can have the whole world say, you can't do that. But guess what? In your imagination, you can do whatever you want to do. So Otto, if you want to have a country called, Autolandia, and you want to change the name of Disneyland and call it Autoland, you can do it. Doesn't mean they're going to follow along, but you can do it. So I think some of the people that live around the Salton Sea probably want to, take me out to the desert and bury me because they don't get that it's just a joke. And of course, our citizens are playing along with it, and that's the fun part. The citizens that get the satire are commenting anything for our great Sultan, and they're just going along with it. And the people that don't get it are like, what is this Jim Jones cult? It's so much fun.
I love it. Again, I said it a little earlier that you've given me this whole new perspective on this micronation you created, which I'm seeing it now as like, it's almost like an act of rebellion against the mainstream narratives and the politicians, and just to me, it's so comical now. After 2020, all politicians are just like comical to me. It's just, I can't watch politicians talk without laughing a little bit. So I love that you're doing this. I love that you're bringing humor and bringing this sort of perspective into this.
I love that politicians, like, literally, and not all of them, of course, right? We're generalizing, but I love that so many of them will cause the problem and then 2 years later come up with this solution like they're a hero. Like, we're going to... Bro, you're the one that caused the problem in the first place. Instead of just saying, man, we made, or I made mistake, or man, our government messed up. And it's crazy. I got a parking ticket, and I was in my...
I saw that. Yeah, tell me about that.
So Slowjamistan has its own fleet of vehicles. We literally have a black and white cop car with the lights. And I mean, it actually is very illegal to the California code. But since it's registered in Arizona, and we follow Arizona laws, oddly, it's not illegal in Arizona. We can drive through California. It's kind of like if you're following the Arizona tint laws, and you're driving to Disneyland, you have to drive into California. So California has to respect Arizona's vehicle codes, if that makes sense. Just to give you a little behind the scenes. So anyway, we get away with it. So I pull up to the airport and drop someone off, and they needed help with their bags. So I literally, yes, I left the car on the curb for freaking 90 seconds. I ran the bags like
That's all it takes, man, in LA.
50. But I come back and I see, this is the crazy thing though. I see two cops. They're like looking at my car, and I was hoping it would just blend in, but apparently they saw Slow Jamistan on the back, and they're looking at it. So I expected them to like yell at me and say, "Hey, you can't leave that there." Well, dude, I walked right by them, like regular pace. I didn't got in my car. There was no ticket on the drove away. I'm like, all right, cool. That was close. They freaking sent a ticket to my house, and they wrote on the ticket, parking ticket, and they wrote on the ticket, "Driver fled." I'm like, bro, what do you mean fled? Like you were too out of it, or you didn't know what was going on to say something. You said that I fled. Anyway, got to have some fun with it. It's an opportunity, so we're going to go fight it in court. Of course, we sent them letters and affidavits on official letterhead, and, I mean, just clowning the officer. At the very bottom, we put, we went on and on in our satire, royal speak, and then at the very end, we said, but by the way, the Sultan says, please don't punish the rookie officer, Jay Gonzalez, for his silly mistake. Let this be alerting. Let this be a teachable moment for him, And I copied the officer on the letter, so he got a copy of it too. So we're going to show up. The appeal was denied, so we have to show up in court. So I'm waiting for the date. We're going to show up in court in uniform. We're going to have some fun. So.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I can't wait to see what happens with that. Even if it just gets resolved like any other thing, I feel like you're just going to have fun with every step of the way.
Absolutely.
Man, I love this conversation. I want to keep it going, but I know I don't want to keep it going too long. I did have a few more questions, and we can end it. So I'm the crypto guy. That's my thing. I talk about crypto, blockchain, all of that. Have you had any experience with it whatsoever? Do you know anything about it that you can share?
So where's my phone? I'll see what my.
What's your perspective on blockchain and crypto? Because I know you have your own currency. That's why I ask.
Yeah, so I have no problem admitting that blockchain has been explained to me, and my pea brain cannot get my mind around it. And I don't know if I even want to try because, as you can tell, I'm the creative, artsy guy. Math and all that stuff, it's never been my strong suit. I think that's why Slowjamistan is on the brink of a financial crisis. Is I'm just really bad at numbers and stuff. But I play around with it a little bit. For myself, I consider it as gambling. Like, all right, let's buy some of this and let's see if it goes up. I would like to have our own digital currency for Slowjamistan. I want to hopefully meet someone I trust enough to actually do it. And I would be willing to invest my time and even maybe a little bit of money into it as well. That's all I got for you, though. I'm ignorant on it.
I brought it up. I'm glad. It's interesting that you just said that because I brought it up because, man, the fact that you have your own micronation, you can create your own currency, your own monetary system using blockchain. There's something in crypto called a DAO, D-A-O. It's a decentralized autonomous organization. So it's simply put, you have the current monetary system that flows through centralized systems, right? The central bank digital or the central bank currency.
Right.
And then you have decentralized autonomous organization, which is the weight of the wealth or the currency is held by the citizens, by the individual citizens themselves. So there's no centralized treasury. It's all
Sure.
individualized by each person's wallet. And then they can send it to one location, one wallet to be spent. And it's all done through this DAO. It's a voting system. It's everything. It's everything you can think of that would make a monetary system function. So I can definitely, I would love to share more about that if you're interested and you want to know more of how it's structured, if that is something that you're willing to do.
Absolutely.
But yeah, man, I'm just fascinated. I'm just fascinated about your journey, about your experiences and what you've built so far. I cannot wait to see where this moves into, like how this grows. It's funny because like now that I have this new perspective, I actually had to throw away a bunch of questions because I thought it was a serious thing. Now that I have this new perspective, I'm wondering, because it is based on so much fun, if like 50 years down the road, it's actually a real nation not even that 20 years down the road, it actually turns into a real nation. Well, a real nation in the sense of like people taking it more seriously. But
Well,
yeah, I just love it.
And that's the thing about it, though. With a lot of micronations, it truly can be whatever you want it to be. And what I like to actually have some houses out there, a business out there, absolutely. I mean, this thing splinters off in so many directions, and there are a few directions that are very serious. Like, you know, and we're talking about investing here. You know, one of my goals is, and I don't mind sharing it, is, you know, the location is good. It's right on the highway. You know, I'd like to meet a business owner or someone who has capital and wants to put a storefront or a gas station or a solar farm, and comes to me and says and wants to use my land. And you know, I would make him or her a great deal because I'm looking for help with the infrastructure on my land. So, for example, you know, I contacted Tesla to put a charging station there, because when I looked at the Tesla supercharger map, there's a big, you can draw a circle around Slowjamistan, and Slowjamistan is in the middle of this giant dead spot for Tesla superchargers. So, no, I mean, again, it's based off of humor, but there are a lot of different ways that this can go. And yeah, I mean, if we were able to actually have housing out there, you know, again, it's what you make it. And again, you look at the map and you look at countries and all these spin-offs, and you know, you look at, there's a little country, you can call it, called Transnistria, that is near, that place is fascinating. That's in Moldova, but it has its own border. It has its own currency, its way of life, and I think it's maybe like a puppet country of Russia, but it's in the middle of Moldova. So again, the lines are blurred. The lines are not solid. There's so many gray areas, and yeah, it's what you make it. So, man, find me some investors, and
let's do it. I'm building a lot of things that is bringing in a lot of people that have money that they're trying to protect because of everything that's happening with the monetary system right now, with the U.S. dollar. People are looking to put it into assets and properties and commodities that can hedge against inflation, hedge against centralization. Yeah. So very soon, I'm going to have a huge group of people that are going to be interested in this kind of stuff.
We could even launch a Slowjamastan digital coin. You know,
we could talk about that. I mean, I've already done it a few times with different projects. I've helped create different NFT projects, crypto projects, depending on it was different on its industry, on its vertical. Specifically a DAO, though, I've never done that, but the structures are pretty much the same. You just got to get the right coders to do it properly. Okay, so last question here. Last question I'd like to ask all my interviewees. You have a few minutes, 2 minutes. You're standing in front of millions of people, and what do you leave them with in those 2 minutes?
It will be something that I've already said, because it is the one value that is stronger than any other value that I have. And I would take those 2 minutes to take them back to a 15-year-old boy that had a dream, that was afraid to take the next step because he was afraid of rejection. And I would tell the story about my mother having to physically pick up the phone and call the owner and book an interview with me. And I would remind everyone how lucky I was to have a mother that did that. And not everyone, including maybe themselves, is that lucky. So you have to be that person. You have to be the person that claps for yourself and that goes out and asks for something. And I truly believe that if everybody followed that very, very, very simple plan or simple idea of just going out and asking for it, and asking for it often, they could absolutely improve their lives. And that is one thing that does not cost them a penny.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, RDub, the Sultan, Randy Williams. I really appreciate it. If you want to connect with RDub and check out his Slowjamistan Nation, you can go either to slowjams.com, Slowjamastan.org. That's slowjamastan.org. Or check them out on Instagram, Slowjams, at RDub, or at Slow Jamistan. Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. I like to leave a last little bit here for you if you want to plug anything or remind anyone about anything or anything else.
Thank you so much. Nope, just become a citizen, absolutely free, if this interests you, of course, and have fun with us. Life is about having fun. Join Slow Jamistan. We would love to have you. Had a great time on the podcast this morning, and hope to do it again soon. Wish you and your viewers and listeners all the best, and stay safe, and hope to see you soon.
And always remember, gamify your abundance. Love you guys. All right.